Sarah, David, could you confirm that you're able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so David and I will be teaching this course today. And just to get started, I've got the Excel Intermediate tables and graphs up on the screen. You feel free to follow along throughout this course or use your own Excel sheet and actually try to fill out the sheet as I do. So just to start and help us gain this understanding of Excel, we're just going to go over just the basic parts of Excel. So we have ribbons and tabs in Excel. So the Home tab is where your most frequently accessed features are. We have your Insert tab where you can add new content to your spreadsheet, and you have contextual tabs that will appear when you have a specific object selected. That's just a high-level warning that we'll see some new tabs pop up in this course today, but that'll be addressed later on in the course. It's important to note that there's a workbook and a worksheets in Excel. The workbook is made up of one or more worksheets. It's the actual Excel file, and the worksheet is individual sheets in a workbook. These are accessed through tabs at the bottom of the workbook. So here we have sales, and then we have inventory. Think of this as just like with your internet browser, how you can go to different tabs. The same concept applies for going to different sheets. In review of these different tabs and that we have as options, we also have something called a data tab, which is important for finding features that deal with data organization and analysis. And there's also a very key tab called the Review tab, which is great for using spell check. My colleague David on the line always loves to say, make sure that you use the spelling feature button when you are about to submit an Excel sheet to someone else, because Excel does not automatically run spell check for you like it does in Microsoft Word or some other Microsoft products. To note, when you're navigating Excel, there are rows and columns. A row goes horizontally across, a column goes vertically across. A cell is a unique location that is the intersection of a row and a column. So for example, cell A1 currently contains the word brand. To start, we're going to go over a basic sort. So a sort keeps all of the data on our worksheets visible, but organizes it either alphabetically or numerically. There is something called a sort and filter grouping on a data tab. So I can go ahead and choose the data tab, and then I can look for the sort and filter grouping, which, if I'm looking at all of my options, I have in sort and filter grouping in the data tab, the options called the sort and filter option. So here, the sort option. Today, we're going to use the sort and filter option located in the Home tab, which again contains most of the most frequently used features in Excel. And in the Home tab, I'm going to navigate to my editing group. Inside of my editing group, I'm going to choose the Sort and Filter button. So in this example, I'm going to start by selecting the price column. Then I'm going to navigate to my Sort and Filter button in my Home tab, so Home, Editing, Sort and Filter, and click on Sort A to Z. If you notice, Excel did not just sort that column, it moved all of the rows to keep the information together, but organized the data in order by price. So I can do that one more time just to get started. And please speak up if we move too quickly in this course. So again, I'm going to price, home, editing, group, and then sort and filter A to Z. Another example we could do is sorting by year. So again, I'm going to go select the year column. So it's going to cell B1, home, editing group, and then sort and filter A to Z per year. You can see it's going from the oldest year to the newest. Next, we're going to go over custom sorts. So sorting allows you to sort a single column at a time. But what happens if we want to sort by multiple fields? For example, if we want to sort by brand, but the contacts are organized by model within those brands. So let's go ahead and do a custom sort by brand and then by model. So the first thing I'm going to do is click anywhere in my data to select in the sheet. We can select what we want to sort later on in this process. I am going to click the sort and filter button in the editing grouping on the home tab. So home, editing grouping, and then sort and filter. This time I'm going to choose custom sort. Next, I'm going to set my first sort to be done by brand. So I have this pop-up box that occurred once I selected custom sort in the home, editing, and sort and filter options. Inside of the sort pop-up, I'm going to choose brand. And then I'm going to make sure that the order is sorted by A to Z. Then I'm going to add a level because in this scenario, I want to sort by brand and then by model. So I'm going to add level and then choose model and make sure it's selected A to Z. And you can read this says sort by brand A to Z, then by model A to Z. Once I've selected that information, I can go ahead and press OK. Before I do that, I see this is asking if my data has headers. In this selection, my data does not have headers. Or I do actually. So in this selection, my data has headers, which I can see it selected in the background. Tell it my data does have headers, then it doesn't select the data to analyze as including those headers. So I'm going to press OK. Now, as you can tell, I have a sort that is occurring by brand and then by model. What if I change my mind and want to sort in a different way? We can go through that process again. So we're going to do a custom sort. Maybe this time we want to do type and then by price. So I'm going to select anywhere in the sheet, then select in home, editing group, then sort and filter, custom sort. I have my pop-up show up and I'm going to decide I want to sort by type. So I change my sort by from brand to type and then by model. I'm not model this time, I'm going to sort by price. So suddenly I can choose to sort by price. You can see in this example, it actually says smallest to largest. So I can choose to sort by type and then by price. Moving on to the next segment, we're going to go over the checklist filter. To explain, sort arranges the data, but keeps it visible. But what happens if we want to see just specific data in Excel? The filter feature will hide some of the data from our view without actually deleting anything. This is really useful for looking up information or only printing specific information in very large worksheets. I can just tell you from my experience, I use the filter feature quite often. It's very key and helpful when using Excel. So in this activity, we can think to ourselves, what if we want to create a filter to only show trucks? So in our types of cars, we see that there is views of cars, SUVs, and trucks. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Sort and Filter button in the Editing group on the Home tab. So Home, Editing, Sort and Filter, and then I'm going to click on Filter. You'll see in this case, all that changed were the option arrows that appeared next to each one of our column headings. Just to refresh, the column is column A, column B, column C, and we see these option arrows. We only need to click on the filter button once to perform as many of the filters as we want. All the filter button on the ribbon does is turn on and off these option buttons. So I'm going to, in this example, click on the option arrow on the type. Clicking on the option arrow on the type, I can click in the box to choose that I want select all, where I see all these check boxes are. You'll see that when I click in the box, the checklist box for select all, it actually unselects everything. It's not necessarily intuitive to click on that select all button to unselect everything, but what we're doing is just unselecting the select all button. Now I'll show you one more time. I'm just clicking this select all check button. Now that I've unselected all these items, I can focus in, one could say filter in to truck. So I will click on the checkbox next to truck on the left. And you'll see this is the only item that has the checkbox on it. And then I'm going to press OK. You'll see now our data is only showing things in our list that are trucks. It's easy to tell that your spreadsheet has been filtered by noticing this column option now has a funnel icon appearing next to the filter option on type. The row numbers have turned blue on my left, so I see these row numbers. They don't count 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just the rows that are shown. And there are rows, again, missing from our list. I can't see between 1 and 32. Please remember that if someone filters a workbook and clicks Save, that filter is saved. So if you ever open a workbook that looks like it contains missing data, check to see if filters are turned on. So again, I'm going to zoom in to make it a little bit easier for you to see. You can check to see if a filter's on by looking at this option button in the bottom right of the cell where the filter's on to see that filter icon. You can also look to the left and you'll see that those blue rows. So now I'm going to remove the filter. So first, I'm going to click on the options arrow next to type. And then I'm going to click Remove Filter from Type. Again, I'm just going to click the options arrow next to type where my filter has been turned on, and then choose the clear filter from type. As another exercise, we can also create a filter to show only vehicles from 2017. So in this case, we're going to go to the year. We're going to click the filter button in the bottom right of the cell. and we are going to click the select all checkbox, because again, we just want to unselect all of the checks. Once that's done, I can choose only 2017 and then press OK. And then I only see 2017 options. And I can also see that my filter is turned on by looking at the symbol and the blue icons, the blue rows. Now I want to turn off that filter from here. So all I have to do is in the bottom right, select that filter and then click clear filter from here. In our next section, we're going to go over the number filter. So checklist filters, like we've just shown, are great, but sometimes there are cases where we only want to display a couple pieces of information. So if you want to display a range of information in a column with several hundred options, we could create this different filter. So in this case, we're going to create a filter to show only vehicles that cost more than $30,000. So I'm going to click on the options button next to price. So here in cell E1 in the bottom right, clicking the options button. Then I'm going to hover over the number filter. So I have the options that I can use with my number filter. So again, here's my number filter and I just hover my mouse over. Once I've hovered over and I see all these options pop up, I'm going to click on greater than or equal to. Remember, in this case, we just want to see vehicles that cost more than $30,000 or equal to. So I'm going to type in 30,000 and press OK. As you can see, this filter worked successfully. I have the filter button on. On the left, I can see these blue rows. You'll notice they're not sequential anymore. I have 1, 18, and then I would jump between 20 and 22. And my results show me all of the cars that I have that are over 30,000. Once I'm done looking at the results, I've answered my question, I can easily select this filter button and clear the filter from price. We can go through a different example using the same concept. For example, say we wanted to create a filter for price between $20,000 and $30,000. So in this case, I'm going to choose the filter option for price between in cell E1 in the bottom right option. And then I'm going to hover over the number filter and look at my options. Then to figure out for a filter for between 20,000 and 30,000, I want to choose the between option. So in this case, I'll want to tell Excel that for price, where it's greater than or equal to 20,000, or it's actually and, so it's greater than or equal to 20,000, and the price is less than or equal to 30,000. So I've chosen price is greater than or equal to 20,000 and is less than or equal to 30,000. Then I'm going to press OK. So now I can see the car results that are between 20,000 and 30,000. Moving on to the next section, we're going to go over comments. So I'm going to clear my filter from price and go over comments. So for comments, Excel is a great tool where you can add comments to a cell to provide information about the contents. So this could be a case where you're sending this over to a colleague and you want to make sure when they look at the book, they make sure they observe your same observations for a particular cell. So to add a comment to a cell, for example, that the data is preliminary, we could right-click on a cell. For example, maybe that's going to be the date. Let's do price in the same example. So we'll do a right-click on the cell, and then we can add a insert comment. So again, I'm just going to right-click with my mouse on that cell. Then I'm going to click New Comment in this case. And then I'm going to type my comment, which could be something as easy as this data is preliminary. So I accidentally clicked out. I'm going to right click again. I'm going to say New Comment. Then I'm going to say this data is not final. And then I can click outside of the comment box after submitting. And you'll see that a red or purple triangle appears in the upper right corner of the cell. To view the comment, all you have to do is hover over the red triangle. As you can see, it doesn't show up anything more than just that top right triangle. And then once I hover my mouse over that triangle, I have the comment. I've reviewed this comment and I'm okay with it. I'm actually going to click on the ellipsis to delete the comment and just delete the thread. In our next section, we're going to go over formatting as a table. So when we're looking at this much data,
Hi, Rachel. Sorry, this is
yeah,
Sarah. Since we're moving on to a new section, I just wanted to remind people to go ahead and put their questions in the Q&A if they have any questions. Rachel did a really good job going over a lot of different ways to filter, and if you have a large set of data, that's a really important feature of Excel. So if you do have any questions about what she covered, please feel free to ask and we'll make sure we cover that. And I don't see any questions, but if they show up, I'll let you know. But thank you so much, Rachel. I'm gonna mute now.
Thanks, Sarah, appreciate that. And just to build on that, a lot of these concepts are built off the Excel Basics course. So I definitely recommend attending that course if there are some questions that just building your foundations you have about Excel. So continuing forward for formatting as a table, when we have a lot of data in the spreadsheet, it can be hard to see exactly what is going on in that spreadsheet. So formatting as a table gives us a visual element to the table that makes it prettier and easier to read. So to format your data as a table, first you'll clear your filters by clicking on the Sort and Filter button and selecting Clear in the drop-down menu that appears. Since we don't have any filters on right now, we can tell because we don't see that filter option. We don't have anything to clear, but if I did have a filter to clear, I would just click the drop down and choose Clear Filter from Price. Next, I can click anywhere in my data and then navigate to the Home tab, look to the Styles grouping, and click on Format as a Table. So again, just to show you where we're going to the Home tab, Styles table, and Format as a Table. Next, I'm going to select any of these formatting options. So in this example, we may want to choose this. Not sure if there's a vote on the color, but we can do this blue table layout. So once that occurs, I know that my cells have been selected for the table because I can see this dashed moving line for my selection. And then it tells me in this format as a table option that Excel has chosen between cells A1 all the way down to F48. I'm going to also keep this check mark beside my table has headers. Got my headers at the top, and that's part of my selection. I'm going to press OK. So now that we've got this table layout selected, you'll see that the filter buttons are already part of the table layout. They're active automatically with table styles, and that the table extends just as far as the text fields do. I think it's very important to note right now that do not leave blank rows or columns between data. Otherwise, when you're creating an Excel table, automatically Excel could miss some of the information you want to include. That's just something you might want to remember when you're creating tables. So in this case, I've just got this blue layout. If I decided I wanted to have a different layout, it's really easy for me to now change the table style. So I can actually go and choose in the Home tab. After selecting my table, I'll see Home, Insert, Draw. I've got a new tab called Table Design. We talked earlier in this course about the creation of new tabs, and in specific instances, and based on this context, we actually have a new tab called the Table Design tab. You can see in the Table Design tab and the Table Styles group that we have these different views. And if I hover over this different views, I can see this is Aqua Table Style Light. And there's an arrow on the right that says More, so I can quickly change the style of my table. If I choose that arrow, I actually see all these options and can change the layout of my table, or by layout I mean the formatting, the view of that table. So I'm just hovering over and you can see these different views. Well, in this case, I like this blue option down here that allows me to have this alternating row color. So I'm going to just left click that blue option, and suddenly my table is this new style. It's really easy to do in Excel using this table formatting option. Next, we're actually going to just define a graph and a pivot table before we move on to actually creating graphs and pivot tables. So it's important to note that a graph is a visual representation of data. Probably seen it. There's examples are pie chart. We can have pie charts or bar graphs, or we can create something in Excel called a pivot table. A pivot table is an interactive way that we can summarize large amounts of data quickly. So we can use a pivot table report to analyze numerical data in detail and to also answer questions that we don't anticipate about the data. So both of these two tools, the graphs and pivot tables, are data summary tools. To start, we're going to create a graph. So when is it actually appropriate to create a graph? It's when we want to visually represent data. Graphs work best when we have information on two axes, but not more than that. So we have information on from A to F and also our rows, right? 1 to 48, if I recall correctly. We've seen graphs used on TV all the time. You probably see it for sports or weather or financial reports to see how much money we have today versus last year. For this example, we're actually going to insert a graph showing the earnings for all of the stores in Arlington for last year. So first, I'm going to go to the data that I want to analyze. So that's actually on my sales sheet in this Excel workbook. So in my sales sheet in the Excel workbook, I can see this information for the Ballston store, the Shirlington store, and the Aurora Hills store. This information right off the bat, it looks like it's hard to see for you as an individual. So I can go to the right and click the plus sign in the bottom right of the Excel workbook to make it easier for me to see. So zoomed in. Next, I'm going to click anywhere inside of my data. It's important to note that if you've not clicked into a cell with text in it for this exercise, you will get a blank graph. Make sure you always start by clicking on the data you want to display. So in this case, I am going to go to the Insert tab. So I've got the Home tab and then the Insert tab. And then in the Insert tab, I can see in the Charts section that there are various chart types. I can hover over and see I've got my column or bar chart, my line or area chart, and then my pie or donut chart, and I've got all sorts of charts over here. If in this case, I'll first want to ask what kind of graph types would work best for my table. It is a really cool feature that Excel has. You can hover over and use something called recommended charts, so you can choose the graph, the chart type. So once I go ahead and select the data that I want to include in the chart, navigate to the Insert tab and then Charts, I can actually click, in this example, I'm going to click the column chart. In this case, I've clicked the column chart, and I want to just do a 2D grouping. So I can just column 2D, and once I hover over this image, I can left click, select, and I have my chart. You can see this chart is laid out and the data that is selected. So this is a pretty basic graph that Excel just handed me, but it's not really exactly what I wanted. So next we're going to edit this graph or chart to make it just easier on our eyes. First, I'm going to make this bigger. So if I look at the chart, I can see that I can hover over the bottom right for the chart area and then left click with my mouse. And while holding the left click button down, I can drag. And that'll make my chart bigger. Next, I can also change my graph title. So in this example, I'm going to change it to 2015 store earnings. So I just select the chart title and I'm just going to delete the text present and write 2015 store earnings. Then I'm going to decide that I would like to change the chart type or change the layout so I can actually navigate to, again, my chart design tab. That's a new tab since I'm in charts, chart design, and then I can do a chart layout, quick layout, and then once I click the quick layout, I can actually hover over these options to have Excel provide me a chart that better meets what I'm looking for. So in this example, I'm going to choose this, let's just say layout 1. Now that I've formatted this chart the way I want it, I can also add different features for the chart. So in this case, I look at the chart and it's selected. I can see on the right, I see a plus sign. So I've got my chart, and then on the right of my chart, in the top right, I'll see a plus sign for my chart element. You can actually click the chart elements plus sign, and you'll see all of these options: axes, axis titles, chart title, data labels, etc. So if I click the checkbox where there's no checks present, you'll see there's now the axis title shows up. You can also unclick. I don't have that if I don't want it. I can scroll down and you'll see data table. I can click that and I can have the data table, which is the actual numbers for each of my stores present underneath the chart. I'm going to unselect that in this case. Say I
Hey,
don't like,
Rachel.
yeah,
Hi, sorry, this is Sarah.
no worries.
We had a question about charts. When someone's having a problem is making the colors match from one chart to the next. So how do we select what color the data is shown in? And we have another question about filtering, but I feel like we can just go back to that once we finish charts.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. To answer that question, if you want to change the color in your chart, which is very common, it happens quite a bit, all you have to do is select the column you'd like. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to make it easier for us to see. And I'm going to select, say, for the Bolston store, I'm going to click that column. And you can see just by clicking that column, all of these blue columns for the Boston store are selected. Once I've selected that Boston store, I am going to go and go to my home tab. And then in my font options, you'll see my only option that I can use right now is fill color. I'm going to click on the drop down and let's say that I want to use, in this case, yellow. So I can just click yellow. And all of these colors are changed to yellow, including the legend beside the Bolson store name. So I know that all of the yellow columns are for the Bolston store. And using that concept, you can easily update all of the colors for the columns. So if I wanted to change the Shirlington store color, you can also change that color to perhaps I'd like it to be blue. Again, after selecting the actual column, I'm going to select home, font, in my font group, the fill, and then I'm going to hover over the color I'd like. So in this example, perhaps I'd like this aqua accent 5 lighter 40% blue. So now I have my chart with different colors. You mentioned there was a question about filters as well, Sarah.
Yeah, so actually we have a follow-up question on the chart color, so maybe we just do that one first since it relates. Is there a way to change the color based on the size of the column? For example, if it's below 100, below 1,000 it's red, 2,000 it's red, 2,000 becomes yellow, etc. I think that's like the stacked ones, but I'm not 100% sure.
So you can, let's go back to the principles here. And the short answer is for Excel and for Excel columns. You actually can, now let's not talk about graphs right now. We can apply that principle later, how we want to apply things. But for the actual columns too, you can actually have your columns or the cell change colors based on specifics, like if it's between X number and X number or other cases. That's actually something we get into a little bit more depth, actually in Excel Advanced. So great question, and that's actually something that we touch more on in the next series of this course.
Okay, so thank you, Rachel. the question about the filtering is if you could please show again how to add a filter on a column.
No problem. So to add a filter on a column, for this example, I'll actually go back to my inventory sheet. And for my inventory sheet, so if I have, so let me just clarify, you're speaking of for the Excel sheet. If I can add a filter on the column, just to go over home, editing, and sort and filter. Then I can have a filter on or off.
So if the person who asked that question, if that didn't answer the question, go ahead and repeat your question in the Q&A. We're happy to go over it again if we didn't quite get what you were asking.
Perfect. So I'm just going to keep moving on right now, and we can also circle back at the end of this course and answer the question to focus in on those specific instances. It sounds like we've got a lot of good questions, and I highly recommend moving on to the advanced lesson for this course. Right now, we're trying to build up your foundations. So there's so many great things you can do in Excel, but we're trying to build up those building blocks for you so you can more easily use this tool and be able to answer each of them, those specific scenarios we come across. So in this case, we're going to move on to actually changing how data is displayed. So for this activity, we're actually going to insert a graph showing how much each location made in March. So I'm actually going to delete this graph right now. So I'm just going to right-click this graph. And you'll see I don't really have a clear option for deleting it. So if I don't see anything to delete it, I can actually navigate on my keyboard in the top right of my keyboard. You should have a delete button. I'm going to press the delete button, and the actual chart is gone. So in this new scenario, we want to create a graph comparing how much each location made in March. So if I wanted to figure out the kind of graph that would work best to compare income of locations for a single month, I could easily go and select my data, go to the Insert tab, click on Pie Charts, so Charts, and then I can navigate inside and see Insert Pie Chart, and see, if I choose this 2D pie, that this is not exactly what I want. So I can just click on 2D pie, and this is not actually addressing exactly what I want. It looks like it could be displaying on the wrong axis. That's just not clear information. So the first thing I can do is say, well, I want to switch my row column in the data grouping for this pie chart. So I'm going to say, looking at my different tabs with my pie chart selected, I've got the chart design tab, and then I'm going to go to the data grouping and click the switch row/column button. Now I can see just in January that we have by each store. But we need March in this scenario. My question was how much each location made in March. So the next thing I'm going to do is say, looking in my options again, my chart is selected, going to chart design, and then I'm going to say, here we go to in data, select data. You'll see that Excel is pulling from the top of the list, and we can uncheck data that we don't want displayed in the graph. So in this example, I'm going to uncheck the boxes next to January and uncheck the box next to February. And then I'm going to press OK. And now I can see how much each location made in March. Remember, if I wanted to format this to make it easier, because I don't have numbers, I have the option of going to my chart design and then my chart layouts grouping to see, I can see the percentages themselves. So in this example, I'm going to choose layout 1, and suddenly I have these percentages easily shown. Again, I just want to say that Excel is a great tool. There's always a few different ways to do different skills, and our goal here is to really give you the understanding and familiarity of the different things that Excel can do. As you come across different situations, you'll actually be able to dive more into these different options that Excel provides and have that confidence to use the different features that Excel has. There's always more to learn, and we're just giving you the building blocks. It's very important, and it will make you so much better in Excel if you actually open Excel up yourself and just try to play with it. You can use the data set that we're providing today or another data set of your choice to just better familiarize yourself with the different tools and capabilities that Excel can offer. So in this case, if I wanted to change the graph to show how much each store contributed to total earnings for every month, I can go ahead and select my chart and then say I want to look to the type grouping inside of the chart design tab and say change chart type. Next, after clicking that, I am actually going to choose a column. I want a column chart this time. And then out of my options, let's say I want to choose this, let's say 100% stacked column chart type. And then I'll just go with this first option. Once I've done that, I'm going to press OK. So this information does not show us what we're looking for, does it? So we'll want to first see if our row or columns need to be fixed. So in chart design, data, switch row or columns. And then this shows more information, but I don't see January and February. So if I wanted to add back January and February, I would actually go in to my chart design. Then I would choose my select in the data tab. I'm sorry, my apologies, the data grouping, the select data option. And then I see that January and February are unchecked because I unchecked them earlier. So I go ahead and check both and press OK. So in this case, I can go ahead and make this bigger to help me see in an easier format how much each store contributed to total earnings for each month. I'll say this, I chose a layout earlier that helped me see the actual layout of the pie chart better, but it just is very hard on the eyes to look at this updated stacked column chart. So in this case, I'm going to navigate to chart design, chart layouts, quick layout, and choose a different option. So I'm going to choose layout 1 here. Much easier to understand the information based on this new layout. I can see for every month the percentage that each store contributed to total earnings. Now we're actually going to move on to pivot tables. So when is a pivot table appropriate to add to your Excel sheet? It's typically when you need to reorganize and summarize a large chunk of data without changing the original data. In this example, we're actually going to go back to the inventory sheet at the bottom of this workbook. You'll see I'm going to the inventory sheet. We can easily tell how much inventory we have, for example, in Ford or Toyota. But we don't have exact numbers, and it's not as easy as you'd like to see exactly how much inventory we have by Ford and Toyota, plus breaking it down by the type of vehicle, for example, car, truck, or SUV. So in this case, we can use a pivot table and report on brand and type. So first thing I'm going to do is click anywhere in this data. And then I'm going to go to the Insert tab. Inside the Insert tab, I'm actually going to click on Pivot Table. So to find Pivot Table, I'm going to say Insert Tables, Pivot Table. Once I've clicked that, I'm going to press OK. Now I should have my Pivot Table tab. I'm just going to do that one more time so you guys can see how I'm doing this. So in my inventory, I'm going to click anywhere, and then I'm going to say Insert, my tables grouping. I'm going to click Pivot Table. Again, I have the option of create pivot table, select table arrange. It's saying select table 1. You can see in the background this dashed line showing the data that's selected, and then I can press OK. So it's important to note that fields are column headings from our worksheet with all our car information on it. And we can drag and drop labels to create data reports. So here's my fields, and here's my car column headings. So for example, I can drag and drop year and put that in my columns. And then if I don't want the year as a column, I can just drag and drop and take it back to just the field section. So, for example, maybe I want to take my brands and put them in my column labels field. Here's my columns field. I'm just going to drag and drop and put it my brand and columns field. You'll notice that the brands populate horizontally across the page. These are like your column headings. Then, for example, we could drag and drop type to the row labels field. You'll see now we have in this field the car, SUV, and truck options from our table. These are populated vertically, and these are your row headings. Next, for our pivot table, we're going to drag and drop price to the values field. So I see in my pivot table fields, price, and this left click, select price, and drag it all the way to values. You'll see once I drop price, I have numbers that are populated in my pivot table. You'll notice that the totals appear in the grid we set up with the column and row labels. This is the total amount of inventory we have in each type of vehicle. For example, how much inventory do we have for Ford SUVs? You'll notice that the answer is telling us that we actually have $218,838 worth of Ford SUVs in our inventory. It's important to note that when you click away from your pivot table, you will lose these pivot table tabs. So for example, I'm going to click away from my pivot table and I don't have any of these options anymore. You can easily bring back those pivot table tabs by just clicking back on your pivot table to bring back your options. So now that I've gone through that part, I can actually remove these values by at any point also just unchecking from this list. So for example, if I don't want my values from in this pivot table, I can just unclick in my pivot table fields the checkbox for price. Want to put it back, I can just drag it again over to values. Pretty easy, right? So pivot tables are pretty great for all sorts of data demonstration. So for example, if we wanted to create a pivot table displaying how much inventory we have in vehicles by brand and year. So in this case, if we wanted to show our vehicles by brand and year, we could say, well, I want to see the year. So I can bring in year and then drag this over to my pivot table rows. Now I can see in this table suddenly the vehicles I have by brand and then also by year. So pivot table has the ability to show layers of data. So in this example, we have columns for our brand, we have rows with our year and then our type, and we have values with our price. Pivot tables have a lot of great functions too that we can use. So currently, we've really, in this core series, only looked at the AutoSum function. If you're not familiar with the AutoSum function, I recommend signing up for the Excel Basics course to get a little bit better understanding of the AutoSum function. The AutoSum function adds all of the values in the price column. But if we wanted to look at how many vehicles we had in each category, we can change the function that is used in our pivot tables and show how many vehicles we have in each category. So, for example, in this example, I will go ahead and change my pivot table to perform this count. So in the drop-down arrow next to the sum of price in the values field, so here's my pivot table field, here's my values field, here's my sum of price, and here's a drop-down arrow. I'm going to click that drop-down arrow, and then I'm going to click on Value Field Settings. Again, pivot table fields, looking at my value field, clicking the drop-down arrow, Value Field Settings. You'll see that I have all sorts of options that I can show the sum of the price, the count of the price, the average of the price. This example, I actually want to choose the count of the price, right? My goal is to actually answer the question of how many vehicles I had in each category. So I'm choosing the count right now. Then I'm going to press OK. Now I can see in my pivot table the actual count. I know I have in my inventory for Ford cars, I have, and from 2017, 3 cars. Also know overall for Ford cars, I have 9 2017 cars, trucks, and SUVs. And if I decided that I really don't want to know how many cars I have I actually liked the price view better, I can always go back and change it. So I'm going to go back and change the function back to sum. So again, I'm going to look to my right, I'm going to navigate down to my values field, choose the arrow for count of price. Then I'm going to choose value field settings. Then I'm going to choose sum. And then I'm going to press OK. Now I have my numbers back to show me the sum. I can also easily change the view of how I want these numbers formatted by selecting the numbers, selecting home, going to the number format group, and then I'm going to, in this example, since I have price, I pretty much want this to show with dollar signs and decimal points. I'm going to press choose currency. And now we can see this better view for me to understand this information. We went a little bit more depth for how to use these number fields in Excel Basics. So I definitely recommend checking out that course if you're not as familiar. So next, we're actually going to look at filtering a pivot table. So right now, we're seeing a summary of all of our vehicles on the lot in our pivot table. But what if we only want to see data regarding Fords, or what about SUVs and trucks? We can use the drop-down arrows next to the row and column labels to see this information. You probably recognize this concept from discussing sort and filters earlier. So I can easily say in my filter that I want to filter my drop-down arrow for column labels first. So I'm going to go to cell B3 in my example. I'm going to zoom in for you guys. It's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to resize my column so it's a little bit easier. So again, I'm going to hover between C and D until I have the icon with the arrow to the left and the arrow to the right. And I'm going to drag, and same for D and E. This is another concept that we went over in a little bit more depth in Excel Basics. So we are going to then look to our column labels, look at this drop down, and then we're going to click the drop down and then say, I want to uncheck select all. So I want to unselect all the currently selected column labels. And then I want to choose data only related to Fords. So I'm going to press OK. And now in my pivot table, I only have Ford information. Please notice right now I have two columns of repeated data, right? This is the same information because it's just Ford and this grand total. We're going to actually circle back to that later in this lesson. So we'll come back to it in just a moment. Next, we're actually going to clear the filter from column labels. I'm going to click on column labels, click the filter button, and then I'm going to clear filter from brand. And now I've gone back to seeing my full pivot. I can also turn on a filter to display only SUVs and trucks by clicking on the filter icon for row labels. I'm going to click the, let's say in this example, the field select drop-down menu to select type. And then I'm going to say in this case that I actually want to see only maybe 2018 data. I've actually in the middle of doing another analysis and see my option right now is 2018. I actually want to focus in on that. Pivot tables are pretty great because you can just switch to what you want to look at. You can see all of the cars, SUVs, and trucks for 2018 for Ford and Toyota. And then I can clear my filter as well, using the same principle as before. I'm going to click that filter button, and then I'm going to click the select all button as an alternative, or I can just clear filter from here. So it's important to note that when we filter our pivot table down, we are only showing one category of information like we did with Ford earlier, and we can see duplicate data on the screen that's not useful. So we can actually create another filter that will clean up that data. So in this example, we're going to create a cleaner filter for Fords. So I want to move my brand, which in my pivot table fields is in the column section, from the columns area to the filter area. So I'm going to drag brand to columns, or I'm going to drag brand from the columns field to the filters field. Next, on the pivot table, I'm actually going to click on the filter next to brand. So I see in this filter next to brand, where I have all, I click on it, and I can actually click on Ford and click OK. So choose Ford, and then I'm going to press OK. Then I can see that I have values reflected only related to Fords, and I don't have duplicate columns of data. So Excel actually has a feature called recommended pivot tables. And what we can do with recommended pivot tables is insert a recommended pivot table and report on brand and type. So in this case, we can go ahead and click anywhere in this data, go to the Insert tab, click on Recommended Pivot Table. So we'll see in our options, I apologize. If we had an original data set, you can actually use a recommended pivot table. So instead of going through all that work and having to move around these fields, I can take my original data set, go to the Insert tab, go to the Tables group, and instead of choosing Pivot Table, I can choose Recommended Pivot Table. After choosing Recommended Pivot Table, I can actually choose the pivot table that I'm actually looking for sometimes. So if I'm looking for sum of price by type, press OK, and Excel does the work for me. It's already filled out. You can see in my pivot table fields the rows, which is type, and the value is sum of price. This pivot table can also easily be adjusted, just the same as the one we created from scratch. It's just gone ahead and tried to do the analysis for you. With that, this was the quick overview that was planned of Excel today. As always, I recommend making sure you play with Excel yourself so you become better at using it, more familiar with the tools. And it's always a journey. There's so many different tools that Excel has that in most cases, it's just depends on your scenario and what you need it for. And Excel can probably do it for you.
Hey, Rachel, this is Sarah. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for learning with us today.
And it looks like we have another question. Before I get to that question, because I know people are probably going to head out in a minute, I just wanted to tell you that we are going to launch a one-question poll in this Zoom class. Rachel and I have talked about changing this particular example to see if it might be easier for people. So we just wanted your feedback. So if you don't mind answering just like one question, that would be great. We appreciate your feedback. Okay, so Rachel, could you show how to do the filter range again, please?
So just to make sure, I hope this answers your question when you say filter range. So we have inventory. If I want to filter an option, so I have filter on. When you say filter range, I'm assuming you can go and say if I wanted to see for year, bottom right, and then I can only choose, for example, unselect all in 2017. This could be an example. I'm not sure if that's answering the question. If you don't mind, if you could add some context, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, so whoever asked a question about the filter range, if that didn't answer the question, let us know. Also, there was a question I'll just answer verbally now. If the advanced Excel course will be offered soon. So we do hope to offer it in November, December. We just don't have the date yet. So sorry, I don't have that to announce to you yet, but we're hoping to. So stay tuned, or if you don't see it posted, obviously feel free to message me. So let's see. The follow-up, okay, for the filter range question, the filter range you showed for values price ranging, I guess is the question.
Oh, okay. I think I understand. So
Okay.
you're looking for turning on a filter where you, for example, maybe I wanted to see only cars that are between 20,000 and 30,000. So using the filter, I can go and select for price, the options arrow, and then I'm going to say hover over number filters. In this case, since I want it to see only cars that are between 20,000 and 30,000, I'm going to choose the between option. And you'll see now I have this option where it says for price, show is greater than or equal to. This is the case where I want to say 20,000. So anywhere where I have a result that's above 20,000 and is less than or equal to 30,000. So in this case, it should be showing me a case where anytime the price is above 20,000 or below 30,000. Once I've put in those equations, I'm going to say, okay. And now I have a filtered result of all the cars I have in my inventory that are between $20,000 to $30,000. I can see that the filter is on because I can see the filter icon, and I can also see that there is this blue highlight on the rows to show that this is currently being filtered. Does that answer the question? I hope that does.
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you so much. Again, if you don't mind filling out our one question poll, we appreciate it. Most of you have, but there's a few spots left if you want to answer. I noticed some of the questions that were being asked were particularly related to the graphing. And so Excel has some really good basic graphs. They make it really easy to kind of show your data. But if you really want to get into data visualization, Excel is probably not where you're going to be. There's a lot of tools that that build on your data set and do a lot of visualization. So if that's something of interest to you, I'm no expert, but you can certainly shoot me an email and I'll try and put together like a list of some resources. There are some free tools. I don't know off the top of my head how good they are. And of course there's paid tools too. I'm going to go ahead and put my email in here, but if that's of interest to you, let me know. Okay, so there's my email just in case. So does anyone have any additional question? Oh, wait. Nope, I don't think there's any additional questions unless I missed something. Just let me know. And Rachel, thank you so much. Oh, where can we locate the videos? If you need the videos for the course recordings, on our library website, we have like a little page for each website. So I'll make sure to send that out to you. I mean, you'll get that in your email. Just the videos won't be up when you get it, because the follow-up email you're going to get will come out tonight, but we won't have the video ready. So we're not that fast. So you can look back there. Of course, if you can't find it later, just again, just shoot me an email. But hopefully, I don't want to, my colleague does it for me, so I don't want to promise a timeline, but usually like sometime next week he would have it up for us.
Based on my understanding, Sarah, the library also offers Lynda, correct?
Oh yeah, great point. So lynda.com, if you're not aware, is a free resource. So the paid version is called LinkedIn Learning, and then lynda.com is the library version, which is free to you with your library card and password. You can go to our website and access that. In fact, you have to go through our website to access it for free. And there are a lot of Excel classes. The only caveat I have is that there are many versions of Excel. So if you're trying to learn a particular version like Excel 2019 versus Office 365 or something, just make sure that when you select the version when you're looking for courses that you pick the right one.